West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The Post is highlighting what it's calling Donald Trump's laundry list of increasingly bizarre claims. Take a look at this. The Post's analysis reads, quote, "It's difficult to try and compare the relative ridiculousness of Trump's claims over time. But there is no question he has pushed the envelope in new and astonishing ways." Let's recap 10 of the most recent examples. Number one, his claim last week that a massive crowd at a rally for Vice President Kamala Harris, quote, "didn't exist and nobody was there." Trump wrote on social media that photos and videos of the crowd were AI generated, which they were not. Number two, that President Joe Biden prepared to have the FBI assassinate him when it lawfully seized classified documents from Mar-a-Lago in 2022. Number three, that it's the Democrats and their messaging that's to blame for last month's attempted assassination of Trump. Let that breathe for a minute. Number four, that Biden faked having COVID-19 last month in the days leading up to his withdrawal from the 2024 race. Number five, that Trump was nearly in a helicopter crash with former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, after Brown insisted last week that the incident never happened. A different black lawmaker from California came forward to say it was him in the chopper with Trump, not the former mayor. Number six, that Biden will try to reclaim the Democratic nomination at next week's Democratic National Convention. Number seven, that Harris only recently started identifying as black. Number eight, that the crowd at his rally on January 6th was bigger than the one Martin Luther King Jr. had for his famous I Have a Dream speech. Number nine, that other countries are emptying their prisons and sending criminals to the United States. And number 10, that the Democrats want to allow killing babies after birth.
Well, that's an oldie that they
an
lied
oldie
about,
but a sickie.
Lied about for a very long time. So, Jonathan Lemire, yesterday, Jonathan Chait wrote a column for New York Magazine talking about the real media bias and that it's not on the left against the right, against Donald Trump, that in fact it is the mainstream media desperate to just keep this narrative going that this is an election just like any other, that, acting like it's Clinton versus Dole in 1996, ignoring these extraordinarily bizarre claims that would be disqualifying. And I've seen it time and again, a lot of people that sit around and, oh my God, the media, it's so biased against Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump will go out and say that a crowd of 10,000, 15,000 doesn't exist and it's AI generated. and they'll just kind of sit there and then go, when is Kamala Harris going to have her first sit-down interview with George Stephanopoulos? You're sitting there going, wait, don't we stop the presses on that? Don't we stop the presses when he makes up stories about Willie Brown and a helicopter crash? Don't we stop the presses? I mean, you could go down this list of 10 that Joe Biden is going, there's going to be a coup in Chicago, and Joe Biden is going to be riding in on a white stallion with us. I mean, there's just, I exaggerate a bit on that one, but all of these things are just crazy. And yet the press will just take it in because they're so numb to it, and they'll go, what do you suspect her economic theory is going to be on quantitative easing? And when is she going to reveal it? It's just madness.
I think you hit a key word there is numb. I think that the media and a lot of Americans have just grown used to the insane ramblings from Donald Trump. And I think sometimes that the media struggles to give them the coverage they deserve. Now, I think that the press has done better in 2024 than it did in 2016, to be sure. Progress has been made, but there's a long way to go. And part of it is because Trump is, as we've discussed on the show a lot, has this false fire hose of falsehoods. It's almost tough to keep track of everything that he does, to put it in the proper sort of context. I also think that, look, the mainstream, the media, and I won't speak for everyone, but certainly, outlets have suggested this, that there is this perception that the media is liberal, the mainstream media, and an effort to bend over backwards to prove that they're not, they sometimes overcompensate, and they're not as critical with the Republican candidates as they should be. But Willie, I think what this show certainly has been doing all along is been focusing on the stakes of the election. We've been calling out Donald Trump when he lies and his dangerous policies. Yes, was there an overkill of coverage about President Biden's age? No doubt. This show has also talked about how Donald Trump is old too. But I think the key here is to focus on what's at stake this November. And it's sometimes less the day-to-day dramas. But we have to call out what we see.
Yeah, I mean, pick your favorite from David Letterman's worst ever top 10 list that Mika just revealed there. And you look at January 6th versus the I Have a Dream speech. He's raising, as a point of pride, the crowd he sent to the Capitol in an attempted coup against the United States government when the building was defaced, when officers were beaten, many of them now going to jail, some of his supporters, favorably comparing that day, one of the darkest in our history, to the I Have a Dream speech given by Martin Luther King. That's who he is, and we have to keep talking about it. That first claim from Donald Trump on the Washington Post list that Vice President Harris's crowds are generated by AI, that they're not real. One of the signs Senator Bernie Sanders is pointing out shows Trump is setting the stage to deny the results of the 2024 election if he loses in November, part of this numbing we're talking about. In a statement, Senator Sanders writes, Donald Trump may be crazy, but he's not stupid. When he claims nobody showed up at a 10,000 person Harris Waltz rally in Michigan that was live streamed and widely covered by the media, that it was all AI and that Democrats cheat all of the time, there is a method to his madness. Senator Sanders goes on, if you can convince your supporters that thousands of people who attended a televised rally do not exist, it will not be hard to convince them that the election returns in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and elsewhere are fake and fraudulent. This is what destroying faith in institutions is about. This is what undermining democracy is about. This is what fascism is about, Rev. And this is what he's done from the beginning. Undermine the institutions so that you don't believe your own eyes, you believe only his voice.
And I agree with Senator Sanders. He's preparing us to deny the election results in November because he believes that he has a chance of losing, and so does most people at this point. And I think, again, your point, I don't think people understand how deeply insulting it is to compare the March on Washington 63, where Dr. King gave that speech, with an attempt to overthrow an election violently that his followers did, that he was president and sent them to the Capitol. I mean, they had National Guard ready in 63. Mrs. King, I was too young to know Dr. King. Mrs. King said they expected a riot that day. It was the most nonviolent expression of tens of thousands of people for the civil rights movement at that time in 63. To compare that to people beating on policemen, law enforcement, and desecrating the Capitol, in and of itself ought to insult every American.
You know, and Bernie Sanders, that everybody needs really that are interested in what's going on in this country need to take that to heart. Because you can go back and you can look at the rise of other fascist governments, and it's the playbook. It is the playbook that you lie so much that you numb the media, you numb the masses, you numb people, and soon they give up on trying to figure out what the truth is. And I hear this from people I grew up with all the time, and people I've known for a very long time. They go, "Oh, Joe, I just don't watch news anymore, and I don't read news anymore because you can't tell who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth." And then you talk to them further and you ask where they get their news from, and it will be from a conspiracy website that spreads these sort of lies. And so in part they get what they're looking for, but also in part they hear these lies, and again, it numbs them so much that they just give up. And that's exactly what's going on here. And what's the purpose of it? As Bernie Sanders said, it's to undermine faith in institutions. When you have a presidential candidate, a president at the time, saying, "Don't trust American democracy because I lost," and you have Republicans that follow along and undermine the American institution of democracy, and what Trump's own people said was the safest election ever, the cleanest election ever. And then you have a former president saying, "Don't trust the jury system." And then you have senators like Marco Rubio going out and saying that trial by jury in the United States of America, with all the checks and balances, is no better than Castro's Cuba. That is the undermining of institutions that radicals on the far left did in the 60s and the 70s, and that conservatives used to push back against. Mika Edmund Burke said that you can tear down institutions in a day that it took centuries to build up.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going on here. Again, Edmund Burke, the father of conservatism, said you can tear down institutions in a day that took centuries to build. And the essence of conservatism is to respect the institutions, to protect the institutions, and not be radicals who try to undermine and tear down those institutions, which sadly is what the so-called conservative party has been doing now for 9 years, if their person doesn't win.
Over the course of 9 years, if you can believe. And you think about how this show began 17, 18 years ago with Willie. It was supposed to be a discussion, Democrat, Republican, about ideas based on facts. And that's what we celebrated. The civil conversation, the joy of debate and disagreeing on issues based on facts. And today we fight for the truth. Today it's a completely different landscape because of what has happened over the past 9 years. And as Bernie Sanders pointed out, if you can take a crowd and make it disappear in people's eyes, then not only is it fascism potentially on its way or some sort of cult, Sam Stein, but the bottom line is these people don't have to believe Donald Trump. The importance is that they don't believe anything. Read Anna Applebaum's book, read Madeleine Albright's book, listen to what Bernie Sanders just said, and it's kind of frightening where this is going.
Yeah, no, and I'm in 100% agreement here. I know Joe Biden was on CBS over the weekend. He was asked, do you think there will be a peaceful transition of power after the 2024 election? He said, no, if Trump loses, there will not be. And I think they're not like hiding the ball here, right? Trump has already laid the predicate for challenging the election results. In the House currently, conservative lawmakers are trying to push legislation that would solve a problem that doesn't exist. That problem is the ability of undocumented immigrants to vote. Can't do it. But that is too laying the predicate for challenging a result, because if that legislation doesn't pass and Donald Trump is to lose, those lawmakers will then say, look, you didn't pass this bill to protect the vote. Therefore, it was illegally won by Kamala Harris. So I do worry about what's happening what will happen in the post-election environment if Trump loses. And I think we all should be on guard for it. It's a really troubling, harrowing possibility that we will find ourselves in something even worse, potentially, than what we experienced on January 6th.
It is Wednesday, the 14th of August of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, our little convalescing Yorkie, well, I'll give you the usual update a bit later, but she, of course, is sleeping in this morning, so we will be seating you directly because we will fulfill her duties as our door girl. And what will we be seating you for? Well, of course, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Will no one? Okay. If you ever get a chance to check out the movie Beckett, do. I will say that, some of the set design still hews to the 1960s aesthetic, just so you know. Okay. Anyway, how are you? Update on our little Precious. I got to tell you, she's spunky, and that's good. Slept on my bed last night, and at some point, I should mention, she got up on my bed on her own, slept on my bed, then at some point quietly left the bed and got up on the sofa in the front room and actually moved about it a few times. And then, and now she's, I believe, under my bed, which is a nice spot that she likes to go to. It's out of traffic and, covered up. Anyway, today is the day we take her in for her weekly IV drip. And we'll see. Right now, she seems, spunky. Right at this very moment, she's, sleepy. But she's been spunky. And for her to move about as she did last night, early morning, I look at as a good sign. I do. Alrighty. I feel compelled to give you these updates because we love our little Precious. She's such a precious little thing. Okay. We got that out of the way as well because I just feel compelled. And what else has been happening in the world? Oh my. On the local front, it's been relatively quiet for the most part. I wonder why. I think by and large, except for the fact that I have blocked people over there on the town Facebook page because look, 10 years of being called a commie, a pedophile, etc., etc., etc. I'm done. Okay? I don't need to entertain these people anymore. Okay? I've been, I could come off like Pesci. You laughing at me? Well, maybe I am. Regardless, I'm done. Jumping through the hoops. They want to gish gallop me with all sorts of BS. Well, I'm the one holding the reins, little horsey. Yeah, we'll see how far that goes. Anyway, it's been relatively quiet. I would know if whom I always refer to as the usual suspects, I would know if they were spouting off because there'd be other people responding in other ways, and also people would tell me because, they know. they're at that point too. We're tired of these people whining all the time that everything bad happens to them. Oh, wah, wah, wah. Well, okay. And why is that? Could it be that they've been just inundated with a fire hose of falsehoods? I like that. That's why I put it in the show notes and links as a quote. Fire hose of falsehoods. Now, it has a nice syntactical, lyrical quality to it. I like it. But a lie is a lie. A fire hose of lies could be construed as having a lyrical quality. If you really want to make it lyrical so that you tie in, certain fricatives and other parts of speech, you could call it a fire hose of fucking lies. But anyway, bizarre claims. The guy is mad. And you get a fire hose of falsehoods, a fire hose of fucking lies. I hesitated using Joe because I've been avoiding MSNBC this cycle, especially since the spring when certain behaviors were coming to the fore that offended my, sense of well-being. Anyway, I hesitated, but I decided anyway. Why not? So, the idea that people where I live believe the most outlandish claims. Now, I thought people were just using hyperbole when they referred to Minnesota burning to the ground in 4 days. And Waltz was in cahoots with Black Lives Matter to make it happen. And his wife wanted to and did sleep with the windows open so they could smell the burning tires. This is the narrative exactly word for word, essentially. Not essentially. This is word for word. Waltz conspired with Black Lives Matter to burn Minnesota down to the ground in 4 days. And his wife slept with the windows open so they could smell the burning tires. Sounds like Rwanda bullshit to me. Radio Rwanda is what it sounds like. And you see the new Trump campaign ad where there's a side-by-side of this is your neighborhood with Trump. And it's like, a brownstone on obviously, with a blue sky, pristine, with an American flag crisply hung and on a pole out front. And then on the other side is your neighborhood under Kamala. I'm sorry, Kamala. It's morning. I didn't mean it. Anyway, then the side-by-side photo of, the Harris campaign or the Harris administration is, I don't know, I guess a bunch of black people having a barbecue, I guess. And I'm like, okay, so what's the deal? I don't get it. Anyway, it's overt, abject racism. They also say, let the third world come here. We'll become the third world. That's what their campaign script said about these two photos. Bring the third world here. We will become the third world. Okay. And I think they even darkened everybody like they did with the Willie Horton ad. Alrighty. So they're not using a dog whistle. they're not beating around the bush about it, calling people welfare queens and pimps and whatever, absentee dads. I like that one. They're just out and using the N-word. Right out. And why? Because they got nothing left. Boy, they got a compliant press working with them, though. Jesus. Now, the reason I also hesitated using Joe, Morning Joe, for the opening clip, because what a bunch of whiners. Well, we always criticized Trump. We always did. Did we go overboard on Joe Biden being like senile? Well, yeah, but jeez, give me a effing break. Now they're going, oh, well, I guess Joe wasn't so senile. He's riding a bike. Remember they said that, oh, he can't even walk. Well, he has a broken foot. But when you put your boot on and making that simple motion, that's actually, I suppose that's good for you. My ankle hurts just thinking about riding a bicycle, to be honest with you. Ouch. But Joe's riding a bike. Putting out, little zingers every now and then. Oh, passing legislation in spite of the fact that I guess he's a real lame duck president now. How is that possible? Lame ducks don't get anything. Well, he was a master of the Senate and the Congress, let's not forget. Alrighty, well, why don't we go ahead and give you the rundown on what we have in store for you so that we can get right into it, and we will. Okay, so, well, here as we begin in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as the crows are a-cawing outside as, well, I suppose autumn is beckoning, and that's why they're here. Anyway, fresh off an Olympic bronze medal, basketball star Derica Hamby filed a federal lawsuit against the WNBA and her former team for discriminating and retaliating against her while she was pregnant. You're going to see a lot more of this. I would say that sports is really a microcosm of our society as a whole. I'm just saying. No wonder they want to stop teaching sociology. No wonder. Continuing, a district judge says Maine can forbid discrimination by religious schools that take state tuition money. That's right. When in Rome, as the old Christians even used to say. And Indiana's Attorney General dropped a lawsuit against the state's largest hospital system because a doctor told a newspaper that a 10-year-old Ohio girl had traveled to Indiana for an abortion. You know that case. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Japan's Kishida announced he will not run in September, paving the way for a new prime minister. Boy, they've been getting a few of those lately, haven't they? And Senegal's media outlets staged a blackout day to bring attention to the government's attacks on press freedom. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, which is still under construction, by the way, but is still very usable. You'll notice that there is a way to get to our Patreon page and become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. And if you became a recurring Patreon, and how would you do that? Well, if you could afford to send us what you might spend on, I don't know, how about an espresso type coffee drink? That just comes right off the top of my head. Thank you, Drift Glass and Blue Gal. Anyway, if you could afford to spend, I don't know, once a month, if you could send those funds our way that you might spend on an espresso type coffee drink, it comes in really handy because other folks of like-mindedness have done so and allowed us to continue this powerhouse of resistance, because we found out that if you pay your bills, they let you fly under the radar because somehow, I don't know, a technology older than AOL, radar, still exists, and we're able to fly under it and continue being this powerhouse of resistance. And we thank you for helping us pay our bills so that we can do that. And what else does it accomplish? Well, fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. Indeed. Alrighty, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on the social medias, you can do so in most cases at Netroots Radio, and in other cases, simply Netroots Radio. Cut out the simply. For those of you of literal minds. And Tom takes care of 99.9% of them, and Kelly takes care of the rest. And thank you both for everything that you do beyond just the social media thing there. And also, if you would like to follow me on social media, and I got to tell you, I suggest you do, as I've already alluded to why. And you can do that at Justice Putnam in most cases. Otherwise, it's simply Justice Putnam. Cut out the simply. And why should you follow me on social media? Because you'll have quick access to the show notes and links diaries I post daily on Daily Coast 10 minutes before showtime, so you can read the full articles by the actual reporters, so you know where we've gone off. As if you can't tell. Anyway, you do have quick access to those articles, and a lot of times they're a lot longer than what we're giving them due. They're due. So do go and read the full article. You can do that by going to the Daily Co's show notes and links diaries I post daily, and you can do that by following me on social media at Justice Putnam. Alrighty, you can still follow the show on Twitter, because it's never going to be X, it's Twitter. And I know it's still a work in progress. Someday we're going to make it an active thing. But regardless, you can do so at Cookbook West. Over on Facebook, it's West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. You can do that. Anyway, you can most importantly, or more importantly, pick up podcasts everywhere. Everywhere there's podcasts. So do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, even Audible. We are on Audible. Alrighty. Well, let us now, we should, because we're just burning up time once again, but at least we got the usuals in that we have not done so usually lately. This first offering is by Rachel Treisman from National Public Radio. Fresh off an Olympic bronze medal, basketball star Derica Hamby has filed a federal lawsuit against the WNBA and her former team, the Las Vegas Aces. The three-time WNBA All-Star and two-time Sixth Women of the Year winner is accusing the league and her former team of discriminating and retaliating against her while she was pregnant, culminating in her trade to the Los Angeles Sparks in January of 2023. Hamby's lawyers allege that being traded caused Hamby harm, including lost promotional and or endorsement opportunities, relocation to a more unfavorable tax environment, and the denial of a chance to participate for a back-to-back WNBA championship. They are asking for compensatory and punitive damages to be determined at trial. Of course, the Aces did not respond for comment or request for comment, nor did the WNBA. But, there's always something with a but. But a spokesperson for the league has told multiple media outlets that officials are reviewing the complaint. Well, of course they are. Aces coach Becky Hammon has denied Hamby's allegations in the past, saying in May of 2023 that the trade came down to math and business. We made the decision to move Hamby because we could get 3 bodies in for her 1 contract. Bodies. Her pregnancy was never an issue. It was never the reason she was traded. It just wasn't. It's just that her pregnant body was worth was worth 3 non-pregnant bodies. Alrighty. The WNBA launched a formal investigation into Hamby's discrimination claims in early of 2023, around the time that her second child was born, and concluded that the Aces had violated league rules regarding impermissible player benefits. It consequently rescinded the Aces' 2025 first-round draft pick and also suspended Hammon for 2 games without pay for violating league and team respect in the workplace policies. David Sharp at the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Maine did not violate the U.S. constitutional rights of religious schools by requiring them to abide by the state's anti-discrimination law to receive taxpayer-funded tuition assistance, a federal judge ruled. But the judge also acknowledged that a higher court will ultimately have the final say. When they mean higher court, we mean one who's completely drunk on power. I had to get that in. Well, U.S. District Judge John Woodcock Jr. said he sees no constitutional violation in requiring religious schools to abide by the Maine Human Rights Act. The plaintiffs are free to practice their religion, including the teaching of their religion as they see fit, but cannot require the state to subsidize their religious teachings if they conflict with state anti-discrimination law, the judge wrote. A notice of appeal to the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston was filed on Friday, a day after Woodcock issued his 75-page decision rejecting the plaintiff's request for an injunction. The lawsuit is one of 2 in Maine that focus on the collision between a 2022 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that Maine cannot discriminate against religious schools in providing tuition assistance, and a state law that requires schools participating in the tuition program must abide by the Maine Human Rights Act, which includes protections for horrors, LGBTQ students and faculty. We can't even discriminate against them. What kind of ungodly world do we live in? If they only heard what they were saying. If only. The Maine Human Rights Act was amended by state legislators regarding how it applies to schools before the Supreme Court decision. The law bans discrimination on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or disability. This means schools must not discriminate against gay and transgender teachers and students, which could conflict with some religious schools' beliefs. Well, you know you have a choice. You can take the money and abide by the rules, or you can not take the money and be the biggest that you think God says you can be. Associated Press staff brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Indiana's Attorney General has dropped a lawsuit that accused the state's largest hospital system of violating patient privacy laws when a doctor told a newspaper that a 10-year-old Ohio girl had traveled to Indiana for an abortion. A federal judge last week approved Attorney General Todd Rokita's request to dismiss his lawsuit, which the Republican, which is a nice way of saying he's a MAGA, had filed last year against Indiana University Health and IU Healthcare Associates. The suit accused the hospital system of violating HIPAA, the Federal Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and a state law for not protecting patient information in the case of a 10-year-old rape victim who traveled to Indiana to receive abortion drugs. Dr. Caitlin Bernard's attorneys later said that she shared no personally identifiable information about the girl, and no such details were reported in any of the media stories on July 1st of 2022, but it became a flashpoint in the abortion debate days after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade that June. A federal judge in Indianapolis initially granted IU Health's motion to dismiss the case in June, prompting Rokita to file an amended complaint in July. His office then sought the case's dismissal last week, writing that the state's initial complaints had been satisfied by actions IU Health has taken since the Star first reported on the girl's case. Well. That brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again. From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a different kind of parent trap. M. Night Shyamalan is so known for his signature plot twist that he's practically an adjective. However, the surprise in his latest offering, Trap, doesn't revolve around such a twist, but instead on something far more unexpected. Empathy for a cold-blooded serial killer. It's not a surprise that the lead character Cooper, played by Josh Hartnett in a career-defining role, is the butcher. When he's not ruthlessly kidnapping and murdering, Cooper is a caring family man, here fulfilling his teenage daughter's dream by taking her to see her pop idol Lady Raven in concert. However, Cooper soon learns that the concert is really a sting operation to catch him, so he has to figure out an escape before the cops can close in. It's not an easy task, but one gets the impression that Cooper couldn't have been as successful at his secret avocation if he weren't damn smart. The film becomes a game of cat and mouse, with Cooper's nemesis turning out to be an FBI profiler, played by the legendary former child star Haley Mills, who always anticipates his next move. While Trapped is ostensibly about a killer, it's also a meditation on family and the secrets that all families have. Casting Mills, the original star of the Disney classic The Parent Trap, is cute, if not brilliant. Also keeping with the family theme, Shyamalan casts his daughter, Salika, as Lady Raven. While it's tempting to write her off as a nepo baby, Salika shows real talent both as a singer and an actress, though more for the former. That, along with her photogenic features, makes her a captivating performer with a potential career. Overall, Trapped is one of Shyamalan's better offerings of late. While there are some credulity-straining moments, it'll keep you engaged. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Our series on the Federal Electoral Count Reform Act shows that it does offer protections of presidential elections from fake electors and rogue legislatures, and clarifies rules, deadlines, and responsibilities for the states. But that doesn't stop local partisan loyalists from throwing a wrench in the works. We've reported on Otero County, New Mexico, and Cochise County, Arizona, where partisan loyalists initially refused to certify election results in 2022, using bogus fraud claims as a pretext. In both cases, their secretaries of state compelled certification through the courts. Then last week, the Georgia State Election Board voted to allow individual members of county election boards to do their own investigations before certifying results. Democracy advocacy organizations are sounding the alarm, citing counties around the U.S. where professional election officials were replaced by party loyalists. The Washington Post reports that county officials in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada also tried to block certifications in 2022. It may be that GOP strategists are banking on delaying the national certification, buying time to dig up irregularities. Or more likely, they hope their challenges will end up in enough friendly courtrooms to overturn the results. Tomorrow, a new report from ethics watchdog Crew detailing ways to combat this local obstruction. Find more at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org. I'm Brian Beal.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. The act was a key piece of the president's New Deal, a series of federal programs responding to the ravages of the Great Depression. Social Security would provide an income for retirees and the disabled to ensure that they did not slide into complete destitution. On signing the bill, President Roosevelt, known for delivering memorable speeches, addressed the press. He said, quote, "Today, the hope of many years standing in large part fulfilled. The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder, what will their lot when they come to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long that job will last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 50 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. He went on to say, quote, "The law will flatten out the peaks and valleys of deflation and inflation. It is, in short, a law that will care of human needs and at the same time provide the United States an economic structure of vastly greater soundness." Over the past few decades, politicians have increasingly sounded the alarm that Social Security will not remain viable as the large baby boomer generation retires and draws benefits. Yet despite those who seek to attack Social Security, it remains a bedrock of the social safety net for millions of Americans. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the mid-80s, about what we had yesterday. Well, sunshine to start, then a few afternoon clouds. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Then some clouds overnight with lows in the mid-50s. Winds out of the west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunshine and clouds mixed tomorrow with highs once again in the mid-80s. And the winds will be out of the west-northwest, but scaling down to 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated low here in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at only 10 parts per million, though we are in an active air quality alert because of wildfires nearby, and who knows, the wind could change, and it could change and make our air very bad. Let's hope that doesn't happen. The daytime UV index remains very high at level 8, and you know to take care with those numbers. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.08 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. Looks like London is 75 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 83 and partly cloudy with a heat advisory. Rome is 96 and sunny with a severe heat advisory. Kabul is 82 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 85 and fair. Tokyo is 84 and fair. Auckland, New Zealand is 47 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 56 and partly cloudy. Chicago, Illinois is 77 degrees and sunny. And New York, New York is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, in a surprise move today, announced he will not run in the upcoming party leadership vote in September, paving the way for Japan to have a new prime minister. Kishida was elected president of his governing Liberal Democratic Party and became prime minister in 2021. His 3-year term expires in September, and whoever wins the party vote will succeed him as prime minister because the Liberal Democratic Party rules both houses of parliament. A new face is a chance for the party to show that it is changing for the better, and Kishida said he will support the new leader. We need to clearly show an LDP reborn, Kishida told a news conference earlier today, in order to show a changing Liberal Democratic Party. The most obvious first step is for me to bow out. Is he pulling a Biden? I will not run for the upcoming party leadership election, he said. Stung by his party's corruption scandals, well, there's none of that in Joe's party. Kishida has suffered dwindling support ratings that have dipped below 20%. Regaining public trust in politics is crucial for tackling difficult situations in and outside Japan, Kishida said. He called on aspiring party lawmakers to run for leadership and hold active policy debates during the campaign. Kishida said he has been mulling his possible resignation for some time, but waited until he could put his key policies on track, including an energy policy that calls for a return to nuclear power, a drastic military buildup to deal with security threats in the region, and improving ties with South Korea, as well as political reforms. Boncharu and Babacar Dion of the Associated Press World Desk brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Media organizations in Senegal staged a blackout day yesterday, Tuesday, to protest a government crackdown they say targets them directly and is aimed at curtailing press freedoms in the West African country. Television screens went blank on the main TV stations, TFM, ITV, and 7TV, and radio outlets such as RFM and iRadio were silent. Most of the daily newspapers did not publish yesterday's editions, Tuesday, except for the government-owned Le Soleil and the private pro-government Waf Quotidien and Yourbi. The move comes as tensions have been rising between media organizations and the government, triggering international concerns over press freedoms in one of Africa's most stable democracies. Separately, Senegal's main media companies have accumulated massive debt over the years, threatening the sector's economic survival. Well, don't mix news with commerce and you wouldn't have that issue, would you? Maybe not. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.